Hey there, Boots Owen here.
So I've just got banana along.
This is Andy Lee from Andy Lee's channel on YouTube. I'm driving, so if I'm not looking at you, my apologies. We're driving home from collecting a Miele washing machine, which you can't see in the back because of the angle of the camera, but you'll see it in another video presumably quite soon. It's a big 7, 8, 9 kilo commercial sluice washing machine. It was in a cellar and Andy helped me pull it out. The thing weighs a huge weight. It's got to weigh 120 kilos, I reckon, if it weighs a pound. We hauled it out and we're just talking about all the things boys talk about on the way home, but we came to washing machines and whatnot, and we said we better turn on the camera because it'll make a video. And you might want to come along on the journey too. I might be able to put some footage in here, depending on how I edit this video, of taking some of the washing machine apart, but it doesn't have all the swearing in it because we turned off the camera at that point, which would have been the best bit.
There were some choice words.
Yeah, choice.
I'll clarify that. So we're at the point where Owen's underneath the washing machine at the bottom of the stairs, underneath the what's called the sack truck, and we've got me and the lad who's running the hostel trying to pull up the washing machine that's strapped to the sack truck.
And it's just a drum and chassis and it's filthy and it's hard to pull and you've nothing to stand on because you're trying to pull it onto the step you're standing on and all this.
And Owen's getting shaky leg and realising that either we bring it down or it's coming down of its own accord.
And I don't want to do it again, so I open up a packet of swears that I haven't had in a long time. So that's that, and the pasta's done and we're all friends again.
He's laughing now, he wasn't laughing then.
Yeah. And I was just musing now on the way home about the Samsung washing machine that I bought recently, because we're talking about chip crises in Taiwan and America beefing up its capacity to make more chips and this kind of stuff. And whether that's true or not is your own speculation, although I would suspect it is. There's an element of truth to it. Samsung washing machine and tumble dryer that I bought recently have a very interesting feature where you turn them on and then after a few minutes they change the time that they had allowed for the cycle. They just change it completely. And the tumble dryer especially, if it gets to the end of the cycle and feels that it's not really dry enough, it just adds 10 or 20 minutes on and keeps doing that ad infinitum until it's done. And that's pretty clever. And I think the washing machines use a lot less water, and tumble dryers surely must use less electricity if they're matching what they're doing to the load.
Yeah.
But Andy pointed out that most people don't think of these things.
Well, they just stick it in, you know, forget about it, set and forget, isn't it? Like, everyone's too busy to care. Well, on a typical day they won't care, but I suppose when electricity is costing so much that they're starting to put energy meters and everything that they own, maybe they will start to realise, but your average house or wife/husband is not going to think about the deeper run-ins, workings of a smart washing machine, dishwasher. Yeah, but it's quite simple stuff. It's got to be like a photoreceptor.
How dirty is the water basically in the first few minutes, and how much stuff is in the machine?
And the weight, yeah. So it's a weight sensor and a photoreceptor. And
or some proxy way of doing that process, because I've never seen any way in a machine of measuring the weight. It must be possible, but or it's some kind of resistance on the motor or something like that, on the tacho, or on the how much effort is put into turning the load over in the first few turns.
Yeah, that's true.
Give you an indication.
Yeah, and the torque you require. Yeah, absolutely.
So something like that. But the older machines, I think, had various ways of doing that. Like the Bosch WFP 3300 that's in the cellar. It's quite a clever machine. It does have a countdown, but I've never particularly noticed it being clever. The other
can't play chess.
Can't play chess. Yeah. And the other side to it as well that we were talking about was it's only a 5 kilo machine. So if you've got a 5 kilo machine and a 9, 7, 8, 9, 10 kilo machine, 12 kilo if you've got one of the more recent ones, they will genuinely do more laundry in fewer loads, because you can fit more stuff in the drum, and it'll take more stuff, and you can bung it in and it'll crack on, do the laundry. And so that's a genuine thing. Now, I was always caught in this process of keeping an old machine that's good going. And it's the same for the car that we're sitting in at the moment. You've seen some videos of it before. It's a 2003 diesel Golf. It's before Dieselgate, so any of these more recent Volkswagen diesels that were playing scams with how they tricked the fuel economy tests, this one's before that. It's a relatively dumb, non-turbo diesel engine. Very little to go wrong with it. Worth keeping it going. But the reality is, it's probably got a higher miles per gallon than a modern whiz-bang 1.4 diesel.
Yeah, I think the thing with the older diesels is the particulate size that it spits out. So the irony being is, whilst that is bad for your health, it's not as bad for your health as the newer diesels, where the particulate size is such that it can get straight in your lungs, straight into your bloodstream, and affect your internal organs a lot worse. You know, these are essentially carcinogens, and these are supposed to be safer cars. Now,
these ones?
No, this
the old diesel.
The old ones, the particulate size is bigger, therefore it's harder to cross the blood barrier.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Or the lung barrier, let's say.
I'm interested to hear you saying that, Andy, because you're Mr. Electric Car.
Well, I'm also like I've got my first degree was in biology, in genetics, so I've got a fairly good grounding in human biology. But I find it kind of astounding that the car companies have tried and tried and tried to keep peddling the same, arguments for keeping these cars on the road by trying to make them less and less polluting, but actually their endeavours make them more and more lethal. It just takes us longer to figure out why.
Well, it's the same. I reckon it's the same as sports doping, where you can only test for things that you know about.
Yeah.
So, likewise with cars, if carbon dioxide is the gas that they know comes out of the car and they're testing for it, well then if the car company can produce carbon dioxide at any expense of other gases, then that's what they'll focus on. It's human behaviour, or whatever you want to call it. If you've got one job, that's the job you'll do.
Yeah.
But what it all comes back to ultimately, and this goes back to our washing machine scenario, is money. And you don't think about things until it hits you somehow. Either your washing machine is broken and you have to buy a new one, or you're coming into the current winter that we're all in at the moment, where electricity especially, is very expensive. And there's many reasons for that, and I've heard various stories about and somebody in the comments could pick up on this if you would. I've heard that the UK gets pretty much all its gas from its own reserves in the North Sea. Some will come in on tankers, maybe, but the reality is most of what the UK produces is on its own terms. So there's no real reason why the UK should be affected by global prices if it was to fix prices by itself. But of course, if the price goes up, the companies that supply gas will clearly make more money, and so it's in their interests to match the highest price they can get for anything. I don't know how true that is. You heard that?
I've heard something that came from the owner of Octopus, which was based that the electricity prices are on based on the most expensive fuel that is there, which is going to be oil/coal. Yeah, so I think it's an archaic system, and they're lobbying to change it. But unfortunately, what they're lobbying against is the likes of
making profits.
BP and Shell, and and they've got deep pockets for obvious reasons. So it's just telling that there's not a proper windfall tax on these things. It shows who can be bought by such companies with big money, and the UK politicians aren't the only culprits here. They're being bought off left, right and centre all over the world, so it's not just an us thing. But there's some other factors, like, for example, the reason I know Owen is he helped me with some solar, so I'm quite big into putting solar on my own property. And
have a look up here or up here. There's a video that's very popular.
It's quite good, actually.
It's me and Andy up on Andy's roof.
I'm in shorts doing angle grinding in some hand tile roof tiles. You may or may not want to see that, but so I'm into my energy independence in that sense, but it's shocking in winter because there's fewer hours sunlight. What sunlight you've got is not at a decent angle in the sky to your panels. I mean, my panels are fairly flat because they're on garages as opposed to the 45 of your actual house roof. And you know, the ratio of decent sunlight you get in the winter compared to the summer, so I might make 22 kilowatt hours a day in summer, and I'll be lucky to make 2 in the depths of winter. So that's a tenfold decrease.
At the moment, I've got half as many panels or thereabouts as Andy has. Mine are optimised for winter sun, so they're on the wall. So in theory, they should pick up half a day of decent sun right now. They've put out less than a kilowatt a day for the last few days, so it's basically nothing. You can try to balance your use around it, but if you're getting nothing out of it, you've got nothing to try and save.
My point would just like amplify that up and say, well, this is not just domestic installs, but you know, solar farms, they're going to suffer the same way. I mean, they're in the best case scenario, they'll have optimizers on the panels, they'll be at their optimum angle, but it won't make a difference. The fact is, there's not as much sun in these months, and ironically it's these months that you require the most electricity or the most energy, let's say, because it's cold and you need to heat your house. So as a fuel, solar's probably not the answer, at least not in the northern climates that we're in.
Well, until you get into some kind of storage, and people have been talking about stone and sand batteries, but you have to be able to store the energy for 6 or 8 months.
Oh yeah, it's a long term. Yeah,
it's not an answer to be carried by lithium batteries or deep cycling batteries. Not that kind of energy.
Yeah.
But in theory, it's eminently possible. But you're talking into pumping various types of salt to heat them up to their latent phases.
Yeah.
And store them deep underground or in some kind of insulated bunker at a huge volume to make it even viable. It's not a domestic thing like getting a 10 kilowatt solar power battery bank fitted that'll tide you over the night till the next day. So it's all possible, but it's just not there yet.
It's funny because I was looking into, because Owen's got a very, very nice wood burner. Is that what you call it? Wood burning stove?
Eco 2022.
Yeah.
Fully compliant log burner.
Proper job. Absolutely ridiculous when you're in that room with it on. The heat it's giving out is like being in a sauna.
Yeah, I've posted a video of that as well.
Yeah.
It'll be up there or up there. If I get to editing it, or just search for Yodel log burner or something like that. 9 kilowatt burner that over 2 or 3 hours will burn 3 logs. It's unreal compared to any wood burner I've ever had in the past.
Yeah.
So what a wonderful piece of equipment.
Off the back of seeing his and getting the green-eyed monster of jealousy, I sort of floated the idea with my wife of saying, well, why we've got a space where we could have a fireplace. Not that our house needs that method of heating, because we live in one of those areas that's supposed to be smoke-free. I mean, you can still install a proper approved Eco 2020.
2022. Yeah.
I went to a stove shop and they quoted what I would have thought was probably double what I want to pay for such a thing, because to my mind it's got to be an economic decision rather than just an aesthetic one. I mean, an open fire, or not an open fire, but a fireplace with proper logs burning does look a lot nicer than just burning gas or an electric bar fire, but they kick out a load of heat, so it would be amazing for those few days of the year, you know, the absolute depths of winter. So you probably get about 30 days where you really want to put this on rather than use the gas or the electric to heat the house. But is that then worth it? You know, a 12th of the year, or do you just suck it up and put the gas on?
Yeah, you're spending thousands of pounds for what gas you might use could be £200 or £300 £1,000. So you're talking a 10-year payback just for the installation.
Yeah.
Very rough numbers, but that's before you've gone and got any fuel.
Yeah.
And I typically get my fuel for free because I'm enthusiastic about dealing with tree surgeons who are willing in the process to give me their firewood.
And you got your Scandi climbing boots.
I've got my boots, yeah. There's a video about the boots as well. If you want to see safety fails 101, check out that video. I'll have to track that one down as well. This is going to take ages to edit.
But there's loads of like sort of fringe things you have to think about once you have a log burning thing. So either you buy the logs from somewhere else and they're already down to 15% dryness, or you spend ages storing it in these kind of lean-tos, drying them out over 2 or less years.
At least 1 year, yeah.
Yeah, so then you need to sort of resign part of your garden or outdoor space to like just storing wood, and then there's also time invested in doing that. You know, you got to make some time to acquire the wood, chop it up and store it, and that can be just when it comes along, if it comes along, so you've got to keep your ear to the ground for it. There's a lot less hassle than gas, that's for sure.
And well, there's a lot less hassle than the gas you have already installed, I think is part of it. Because if you were going out and choosing at the moment between a log burner and you had a forest full of trees, or a gas installation and you had to pay, I don't know, £1,000 to get the pipe run up to your house, well then it's an easy decision. But equally it's not, because the day the gas is installed and the boiler's installed, you can turn on the gas. Whereas if you've got a forest full of trees, you've still got a year of waiting or more before those trees are processed into firewood. So there's loads of layers going on. The other detail about installing a log stove that came up when we were talking about it previously is that if you've got kids in the house, log stove is just that little bit dangerous. It's not. There's ways of mitigating. You put up a fire guard, you explain to them what's going on, and kids aren't stupid.
Well, actually, it's not just that it's a hot thing that they can touch and scald themselves or burn and lose layers of skin. There's also particulates that come out into the air. So I was speaking to my next door neighbour, and she's got a compliant stove, and she's also got asthma. And speaking to her, she said, yes, I do. She's got an air brick fitted, so it's like, there is a convection of pulling through of fresh air into the room, but she says it still will slightly trigger her. So she knows that there's particulates even a decent compliant wooden stove will give off.
Well, she's gone with an air brick, so the air is coming in from outside through the room and then up the chimney. So what I've opted for is an external air vent. So the stove in the room uses no air from that room. And I would say that, well, I don't have asthma. I noticed that my breathing was different when the stove was lit at the beginning. And I think that's because you go from a situation in the house where relative humidity of moisture is about 60 to 70% in our house, that being in England. And that changes then immediately in the first hour of that stove being on, plummets to about 40%, which is relatively dry for here. So you notice it. It's not an asthma thing for me, but it's just that the air you're breathing is completely different, and it happens quite quickly. So I don't know if that's, well, she's up against a different thing. She's got an air brick. So you're basically recycling the air from the chimney back through the house again, depending on how it's temperature inversions outside and whatnot. But yeah, I'm kind of comfortable with the I didn't think the external air thing was a great idea until I tried it. And it's pretty clever, I reckon.
I like these things called Seebeck devices. So a Seebeck device is the opposite of a Peltier. So you get these little Peltier devices where you pass a current through them, and one side gets hot, one side gets cold. You'll find them if you ever take apart like those mini fridges. That's how they use them. So they'll put a heat sink on the hot side, and then the cool side will make the little tiny USB heat fridge.
So this is one of those heat-powered stovetop fans, eh?
Right, so a Seebeck device is the opposite of it, in the sense that it's optimised not to send one side hot and one side cold if you pass a current through. It's if one side is hot and one side is cold, then a current will be induced into, like a DC current will induced in the wires. And I think it was Jaguar at one point were looking into putting these Seebeck devices along the exhausts of their hybrids, honestly, because it was heat recovery. That's just waste heat that the engine's already, and it's just coming out the back of the car. So why not, if you've already got the batteries on board, it's not much extra weight to put this like strip of what kind of feels or looks like porcelain around your exhaust. I don't know if they ever got it off the ground or if they ever did anything with it, but it's the same kind of thing that I think about when you've got something like a log burner and you've got this huge metal pipe that all the time while that log burner is kicking out heat, the stuff above your sealed plate that's not in your room, that's just going out into the atmosphere and not helping anyone.
It is. But it leaves and goes into the atmosphere and some of that heat. But it's important to have that heat in the pipe to remove the flue gases. If you cool the pipe down, if you cool the pipe too much, the gas no longer wants to leave as efficiently as before.
Right. Yeah.
So you can put water jackets onto them, and they will all work at some level. But you might get into stages where you need forced drafts to suck the products of combustion out of your stove.
Yeah.
I guess it only really matters if you're on a marginal thing, but it depends on the quality of the firewood you're burning. So if you're burning wood that's bone dry, there's no moisture in the wood that will condense out. But if you're burning wood that is a bit damp, and even at 15 or 20%, whatever Eco 2022 says, there is moisture in the timber. That moisture will condense out somewhere. So what you want is for the chimney to carry the moisture out into the atmosphere, not into your chimney, where it will cause condensation, tarring up of the chimney, sticky deposits falling down inside and all that, which is a thing when people in the past, or it's still today, burn old sticky crappy pine that's soaking wet because it's free and that's what they have, and they've always done it that way, and good luck to them. I'm all for these new stoves, I've got to say.
I'm so being somebody who's I'm very much on the sort of side of trying to do things as cleanly as possible and not burning dinosaurs, but burning wood seems like a grey area for me, because wood essentially is renewable as long as it's sourced in the right, it's not trees that
so Andy Reynolds treats this bit in one of his books, Heating with Wood, which there will be a link for below, I suspect, so that you can buy the book and give me some money, or buy it from Andy and he'll get money one way or the other. In Heating with Wood, he describes how it really depends on what the trees were grown for. So a lot of the trees I get will be domestic trees that are being cut down and not replaced. In that case, it's bad news. It's better than leaving the timber to rot, but it's not as good as turning the timber into something that can be used, for instance, furniture or something like that. Whereas if the trees are grown and replaced with 2 trees for every tree cut down or something like that, or just replaced sustainably, then the timber in theory is carbon neutral. The only issue then that you get into, in my opinion, is the type of particulates that come out of the fire. And no matter what level of Eco 2022 you're working with or not, something's coming out that chimney. It also comes out the chimney from the gas boiler. It's just a different set of chemicals and particles, and the gas really doesn't have any particles because there's nothing in the gas in a particulate form anyway. So they're different products of combustion, but something's definitely coming out the chimney. So whether the timber is sustainable, some people like to burn old pallets. I know I did that for years, because that's what you can get sometimes.
Well, they're full of tantalin, so that's pretty dangerous stuff.
So some of them are tropical hardwoods, which obviously burn better, but aren't very sustainable even in the first place as pallets.
Here's the question though, can you tell? Is there a way of sorting them?
It's difficult to tell if there's chemicals impregnated into the pallet. You can tell straight off if they're hardwood or not.
Right.
And that's just from timber identification.
Okay.
And they're all full of nails, and I don't know, like any type of firewood, you warm yourself 3 times or 8 times depending on your attitude, in saving and chopping and stacking and moving and removing and taking out the ashes and everything else. Oh, it's all... We started off talking about washing machines.
Yeah, indeed.
The other project that's on the go that we were talking about on the way down to get this washing machine is that I found an electric scooter, and there's a video about that on my channel somewhere. There's a lot of videos on my channel, and there's videos on Andy Lee's channel as well, which I'll put a link to here. Hold the steering wheel. Andy tried to sort out what's wrong with the battery, and he ultimately came to the same conclusion that anybody would, that the battery's broken.
Well,
one pack of cells has a dodgy cell in it.
Yeah, 9th cell in a 10 cell series pack was low.
Won't hold a charge or self-discharging.
I charged it up to a limit where it should have been in line with the rest of them, voltage-wise, and I just expected either that the BMS would click on, but some of these BMSs have a suicide chip where they say, so the battery, BMS is a battery management system, but some of them have been made smart, which is to say that if a discharge has occurred on any cell in the series below a certain voltage, that they may potentially have like an internal short, because the reason that they are self-discharging is that they have been fundamentally damaged inside. Therefore, if you trickle charge them really carefully back up to their 4.1 volts that the others may be at, you may just be risking a kind of battery fire in the long run. It's one of those things that may or may not happen, and
Probably won't happen.
probably won't happen. But if it does, and you've got it in your house or block of flats with a load of cladding, then
Or Whirlpool fridges.
or Whirlpool, yeah.
I think it was Whirlpool.
But anyway, these kind of
correctly.
scooters, that they are stowable. You see, people are.
Yeah, they put them under the stairs in a load of boxes, and then they've basically got a little time bomb sitting in there with all the other stuff in their house.
And so the suicide chip is one way that the companies are trying to reduce their liability and actually save lives. I guess that's the point, is like save their bottom line from being sued, but also
Sell more batteries.
they don't want to have the blood on their hands, which I guess is
I say sell more batteries. If your battery breaks and the only way to fix it is to get a new one because the BMS has killed itself,
yeah.
That would be a fine way of repairing it. But the reality is, with these batteries, the scooter costs 200 quid and the battery costs 120. Who's going to fix the thing if it's not worth it?
Now here's the thing though, you can just buy an aftermarket BMS without a suicide chip in, right? If indeed this one has one at all, because I don't know one way or the other. But
so fast forward, and I just went to Aldi and bought some power tools.
Ferrix.
I think I've shown them in one of the videos. I don't know which one I've shown it in. I have to think very hard with that. A couple of impact drivers, an angle grinder, and a regular drill with 4 batteries, and those batteries happen to be 40 volt.
40/20.
Yeah, but the 40 volt will drive a 36 volt scooter for, I would say, a few miles. And if you've got a few batteries in your pocket, then you can use all of them or not. But the reality is, anybody's using one of those scooters. If you were actually driving 8 miles each way and running the battery down on your commute to work, your knees would be shot. No suspension. The tires are pretty much solid rubber with little holes in it.
So here's my view on those devices: is actually they're fantastic last mile.
And so that's when a small battery.
So that's like avoiding the nonsense of having to park in pay-to-display car parks in city centres. If you could do the last 2 miles, that gives you so many more options to just park on the road somewhere, as long as you're okay with.
Annoy all the local residents.
Well,
I'm the one who does it. I'm
try and
joking.
find somewhere that's not, a suburby bit to park and that's not ropey as hell, because your car's not going to get smashed into. But yeah, honestly, I think these suitcase things. So there's a guy who used to have a Leaf channel. Can I say his name? Ian Sampson, and he's the reason I bought a Leaf. I'll be honest. Years and years ago, he was reviewing one of the first Leafs. I thought, this guy's got his head switched on, and he runs a company that sells like those kind of suitcase monowheels and scooters and all sorts of kind of personal mobility devices, and they're just absolutely brilliant. But how ridiculous that we live in a country where
that's what bugs me about.
They're all prohibited, and it's a legacy thing. It's like, oh, it'd be so much safer if they didn't exist. Well, that's absolutely rubbish. These things have the potential to remove an awful lot of cars from the road by just making some of the journeys less car-centric,
This is something where we both, Andy and I, lean slightly on other sides of the fence. So only because they're illegal, I think they shouldn't be used on the road or the footpath. This is scooters and e-bikes outside of spec. Whereas Andy's attitude is slightly different as an e-bike user with particularly large motors, around 249 watts, I think.
That's it. Yeah, big 249 watt motors.
Andy thinks, well, they've proved their value to him as a bike that can do 20 miles without even blinking.
And also, to be honest, actually, a 249 watt motor is probably as much as Lance Armstrong, on steroids or not, could put out, continuously. And actually, that's still plenty. If you're a half able-bodied person, you'll probably put out 100 watts. So I tow a couple of kids to school on nice warm days with this American designed Weehoo thing, which is like it's a bike attachment, the trailer inline, so it's not got the width of one of those silly kind of double wide things that gets obnoxious to people who are trying to drive fast.
Single wheel trailer, they're the best kind, because you only need one path for your wheels.
Exactly, inline, absolutely brilliant. And so much so that I built a second one for my dog because I wanted to be able to take her to better dog walks and she's knackered at Crucius, so yeah.
You want to put some videos of this stuff on your channel?
I really do, but I haven't actually finished the trailer yet.
Okay, so we're nearly somewhere that we have to stop, so we're not going to wrap it up just yet. I've got one thing that you've reminded me of that I want to raise with you because I haven't raised it with you yet. There's another YouTube channel called Buy It Fix It.
Oh yeah.
And he was working on ABB Aurora inverters for grid-tied solar. And for a grid-tied solar inverter to wake up, you need DC and you need AC. AC is easy, you plug it into the grid. You can just use a regular plug and it's easy. Creating DC voltages of like 120 or 240 volts DC and not having it tied to the same grid system needs either, it needs some kind of rectifier and it needs some kind of isolation transformer for the thing to work and not kill itself. I've shown how to do that in other videos. Andy Reynolds has shown how to do that in other videos as well. But I can't remember the guy's name, but in Buy It Fix It, what he did was he got a washing machine motor, a 3-phase Samsung or Maytag direct drive machine, took the output from that, which is AC, took 2 to 3 phases that are AC, put it into a rectifier, put that into his inverter, maybe with a capacitor to smooth it or maybe not, and spun the washing machine up using an impact driver or some kind of a drill driver.
Right.
That was on a battery. Now he doesn't really need to be on a battery really because it's decoupled electrically anyway. But he used a battery driver so that there would be no. I don't know why he used a battery driver, but he did. So he got the DC out of the washing machine. That sets the scene as a possible scenario for me to make a washing machine / bicycle powered grid tied generator.
But that begs the question: when you've got a battery on the drill driver.
Oh, no, that's a different thing. No, that was just for test purposes.
Right.
But my nonsense is, if you take some kind of a motor,
right,
and set it up to run from a bicycle to create DC electricity that can go into a grid-tied inverter. I can't imagine. You're saying Lance Armstrong's legs might put out 250 watts for an hour.
Yeah, you'll get 100 watts out of it. Is that
so
useful and worth it?
I would get 100 watts. Well, I think it would be worth it just for the gallery of trying the thing. I think that in itself is a good experiment.
No, honestly, the thing I heard, which I thought was kind of genius and a little bit cruel because it's like hamsters in a wheel, is that I think it was like Brazilian prisons. They actually did this in their gyms. They would give prisoners like reduced sentences if they just pedalled their asses off. And it was like, yeah, I know, it's like...
There's no reason why it wouldn't work at some, but I'm just wondering if it's enough to keep a standard G83 grid-tied inverter just to do something useful for a while. I don't know if it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're going to have mechanical losses, but...
You're going to have, it's just nonsense trying to put food into your belly to run the lights.
It's not...
when solar panels do it free.
But I've always thought that thing where you go, right, you're eating anyway to keep yourself alive, and
it's free exercise.
It's free exercise. People go to a gym to do this, right? They'll go on a bike that's actually plugged in to give it some kind of resistance or some kind of like monitoring. And yeah, I did. I think Great Scott guy's covered this. He's done this, like, and how much can a human pedal, and he's built one of these devices.
What did he get out of it?
I don't know, but I think it's like a more of a fun video than it is a...
Well, that's kind of where I am with it, because I have all of the parts basically. I think I can cobble something together quite quickly, because you just need a bicycle and one of those. I have one of those motors and I have the rectifier and whatnot. Wouldn't be hard to make.
So
it's a waste of a day.
Well, you could also use like Sturmey Archer used to have like those.
But they're tiny. They'd never put out that kind of DC.
They're not.
No, they're 3.6 volts or something. No,
yeah, but could you not? It might.
I don't think so.
I'm just wondering if you could just step it up. That's my point.
But it wouldn't have, well, it would have virtually no current. Yeah, you must, it must be possible.
Yeah.
Get a voltage out of it. Yeah. Alright, that's the nonsense.
A lot of.
Leave a comment, subscribe, and like, especially if we're going on for 35 minutes here. It'll be about a good half hour of nonsense in this video. Thanks for watching. See you later. I'm going to say goodbye, Andy.
Alright, yeah. See you.